Tuesday's election taught us a lot about where the country stands. Some real surprises. I have Farron Cousins with me here to talk about it. Farron, I just have to lead off with the death of the pollsters. I mean, my God, we saw it coming in 2016, but this is way out of whack. What's your take?
Yeah. You know, after 2016, after they messed it up, they said, well, listen, we've adjusted the way we do things. We've gotten bigger, more representative samples. You can totally trust 2020. And then, I mean, immediately, as soon as the first polls started closing on Tuesday evening, you look at it and you look at the polls from just 2 days before and you say, okay, nothing adds up. Especially, you know, look at Florida. Biden was going to win Florida, according to the polls, by about 5 points, ends up losing it.
Yeah.
One of the biggest margins of Democrats lost Florida in 30 years.
Yeah. It's much worse. Okay, I got to spend a couple of minutes talking about this because these folks want you to forget. They want you to forget how they bungled this whole thing. New York Times, great example, gave a 70 to 75% chance of Biden sweeping Florida. Okay, New York Times, double digit wrong up until the day before the election. All right, it doesn't stop there. ABC, Washington Post, gave Biden an 18-point lead in Wisconsin the day before the election. Quinnipiac, Texas, called Texas a toss-up. I mean, Texas was going to be a toss-up, and it was going to turn blue, according to Quinnipiac.
Yeah, it went to Trump by 6 points. I mean, there was no toss-up in Texas whatsoever. And see, the problem is we always have to rely on these polls. Members of the media have to rely on these polls. We don't create them. We take them when they're given. We look at the aggregates. So when we go out there and we report on the polls, we report on this data, we also end up looking silly because we only reported on what the data showed. But I had to go out and do lots of segments saying, listen, I'm sorry that I had said it wrong here and wrong here and wrong here. But that was based on what was available for us.
But you also covered segments where you said, this doesn't look right.
Right.
You said this doesn't, like Reuters, 12 points off the day before the election. CNBC, 10 to 15 points off the day before the election. You know who got it right? Rasmussen and Real Clear Politics. Almost right on the head so far. I mean, just right there. You know, the truth is, the way I see this developing is we have an industry, a polling industry, that feeds the media. And, of course, the media, they're just as guilty, man.
Right.
They want to take this and they want to say, oh, my God, it's over. You know, according to ABC poll, Washington Post, it's over. But these folks are going to go home today and they're going to hope that the American public forgets about it. Now, I'll tell you this. There was a story in The Atlantic. It was written by some cat named Derek Thompson. I don't know if you saw the story. He spends all this time talking about in The Atlantic how it's different now. We have solved the problems.
Yeah.
Isn't that what you're hearing? Into this election, the pollsters are saying, oh, you know, yeah, we messed up last time. Jake Tapper calling landslide talk coming out of Jake Tapper. Well, Jake Tapper is relying on the type of polls we're talking about because Jake Tapper wanted a landslide.
Right.
He starts off with his political ideology. He wanted a landslide. So Jake Tapper takes these polls and he puts them to work. But this guy with The Atlantic, he says we have new methods. He said 2016, there were the difference in 2016 is there were huge numbers of voters that decided late for Trump. Sound familiar, right? 2016, he says it's different because there was no October surprise in 2020. Goes through this list trying to justify why they screwed up so bad.
Well, and what we could be seeing, you know, we can't rule out the possibility of some people not being honest with the pollsters. I mean, but you factor that in to margins of error. That's what that means.
Yeah.
You know, whether or not these people you're talking to are being honest. Maybe they're embarrassed about which one of these old geezers they wanted to tell you they were voting for. It changes based on how the question is framed. And that could confuse people. I know that sounds silly, but it does confuse them. I took courses in how to take polls. You know, that's part of what we do as political scientists.
Right.
So I've studied this. I've written papers on it. And it blows my mind that with as advanced technology as we have now, with as much access as we have to human beings, that we're getting it worse than ever.
Yeah, okay, so Atlantic says it's cured because we have new algorithms. Right. I mean, that's part of their talking. I don't want the American public to forget about ABC and Washington Post and Quinnipiac and Reuters and CNBC. I don't want them to forget.
The Wall Street Journal had a bunch of bad ones too.
That my God,
huge
Wall Street Journal. It was all the same kind of story, and you just go, it is the death of the pollster. Unless they fix this, it is almost irrelevant. You know, the worst thing about it is the state polling. No-name polls, you know, maybe came from a university, they got it right.
Yeah.
State by state, they got it right, but the media didn't want to tell their story because it wasn't a jazzy story. So they didn't tell the story.
Well, you know what? You know, you brought up a good point about the algorithms. They say we fix the algorithms. That means, you know, they're putting these numbers through the computers, they're letting those computations take place versus the universities. What do the universities do? They have actual human beings that sit there and they work out these equations. Again, I still have these written out in a notebook that's under my bed. There's equations you use to determine the poll numbers. Mm-hmm. You input the data, X, Y, Z, whatever it is, and that's what these universities are doing, and that's far more reliable than letting a computer, you know, if you input something wrong in the computer, you don't see it in the final result.
Or if you do a forced polling,
right.
If you force your, we're seeing a lot of that.
Yeah.
We looked at a lot of these, they were just push polls. They were saying, this is a way to say that you're not going to vote for Trump. And they would push poll.
Yep.
And then the media, NBC, ABC, would take all this and they would have just a heyday with it. Polling is dead. I swear to God, I proclaim it dead. This blue wave that we're going to see, it's a mud puddle. Now, I will tell you this. You know, all week we're going to be seeing, you know, these numbers being counted. I think Biden's going to win the presidency. I sincerely think he's going to win. But with the Senate, you know, they had to, there was no blue wave. They had to have the Senate. They had to pick up a bunch of new places in the a bunch of new seats in the House. They didn't do that. And there's some reasons why. Let's talk about those reasons, okay?
Yeah, and I think overall the Democrats, you know, even if Biden pulled out the White House, it wouldn't have been a victory. There wasn't a whole heck of a lot to celebrate on the Democratic side, unless you're just strictly tribal and it's us versus them, then sure. Yeah. If it's team sports, you can celebrate. Mm-hmm. On the issues, though, when you look at some ballot initiatives, I know California had some progressive ones that lost, pro-corporate ones that passed. The rest of the country, though, they did really great. You know, decriminalization of drugs, recreational use of marijuana, $15 minimum
wage in Florida.
Right, right. Florida goes 500,000 more votes for Trump almost and passes a minimum wage increase. That tells you something about Florida voters. They're okay with progressive policies, but not these Democratic
racial identity. Okay, this whole idea of racial identity politics. Wow.
Yeah.
Were the Dems wrong on that?
Absolutely. The numbers were phenomenal. Trump actually increased his standing in every single demographic. Black voters, white women voters, Latinos, and that is what helped Trump stay competitive in this. That's what made this such a tight race. And that played a huge role here in the South, obviously in Florida, but also in Georgia, definitely in Texas. They broke for Trump. And Biden took them for granted. Biden had said on the record, I don't need to reach out. Mm-hmm. We're not going to worry about that.
Let's take a little, I'm going to take another minute and talk to you about what the list looks like. The list of what went wrong. No surprise here. There was a backlash in the states, in so many of the states. There was total backlash from what you call the Hollywood phenomenon. Okay, the Hollywood phenomenon is I'm a celebrity and I'm going to just bash Trump every day that I'm in front of a camera. And for some reason, that's going to have a positive effect at the polls. It had just the opposite effect. People are tired of this East Coast, West Coast elitism coming out of Hollywood, where the Hollywood regards everybody as deplorable if they don't live in the Hollywood gated community. Okay, so that was out there, and it's almost like you idiots, you two-toothed idiots who vote for Trump are so stupid that you don't understand us, the wisdom of the elitist Hollywood. It killed them. It killed them in the state races. It's very clear those numbers are coming out, aren't they?
But what's interesting, it actually helped Trump.
Yes,
the celebrities he had on his side really did make a difference, and that's what was interesting. But again, with the Hollywood elite too, just pushing the just vote, and everything will be fine. Vote, and all of your problems will be fixed.
Yeah.
As if the root of all the problems in America stem from Donald Trump and not this, society, this economic system designed to keep down the bottom 90%. No, he is not the cause to our problems.
Yeah.
And just simply voting for blue is not going to fix them either.
Joy Behar, Rob Reiner, Chelsea Handler, Lady Gaga, Whoopi Goldberg. Come on. They cost so much in their belief that their opinion and their status as a Hollywood celebrity was so important that they could just at every turn attack Trump, and there was a backlash. And I don't think it's going to affect the presidency, but I think it affected the state. I think it affected the state, certainly state elections. Yeah. It affected the Senate, and it affected the House. So somebody needs to get them under control, because it's going to get worse before it gets better. You can't call middle America deplorables because of their religion, because of their family beliefs, because they're blue-collar workers. You can't call them deplorables because you're in your gated, damn Hollywood elitist setting and you believe you're smarter than the rest of the world.
Well, you know what's interesting about that, too, is that the folks on the real left, the progressive left, they view those celebrities in the same way.
Oh, do they? Yeah.
They think this is ridiculous. You can't tell people in the middle of an economic downturn from your, porcelain swimming pool, oh, just vote for Biden, everything will be okay.
Yeah. Farron Cousins, thank you for joining me, okay?
Thank you.